When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions to ask. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
I unite with that. Uhuru, comrades. I just want to be free. And Uhuru in Kiswahili means freedom. So it's constantly on my mind. Even in my sleep, I'm thinking Uhuru. So what's going on? Peace to the brothers and sisters that's tapping in. Happy that you are here, whether you are watching in real time or you're watching later. Watching the recording later on. As long as the information is getting to you, it's all good. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share to your families, share to your circle, share to your network, and let's build and find out how we can build together as we resist colonialism and oppression and exploitation in all its forms around the world, particularly as it pertains to African people, but we're against the oppression exploitation of all groups, right? Because of as long as a people are oppressed and exploited, that's a danger to the liberties of those who are not, right? So you know that's just something that we have to root out, you know, all across the planet. You know, making this a free planet, a peaceful planet. That's the goal and objective, man. Here to root out imperialism and destroy the imperialists and the colonizers. So I think that was a great introduction. Today, I want to get into an update on the Sudan crisis. And I'm actually just going to read some thoughts that I put together, which is a reaction to the Kamala Harris that she gave on her unwavering support of Israel. And you know, it just sparked this thought in me, and this feeling of how what's happening in Sudan just continues to be ignored by those who are in positions of power. And there may be some things that they're doing behind the scenes, which is not enough, because it's not to say that there hasn't been any action on the part of the United States. There has been sanctions imposed on the military powers in Sudan, and those companies who are backing and supporting those military powers. So it's not to say that nothing hasn't been done, but not enough has been done. And it's not being spoken about enough. So when there is an act of war or conflict or anything that has to do with Israel and their genocide against the Palestinians, even though it's not painted that way by this American regime, they're quick to come to the defense and speak about the current affairs and events that are happening in that region of the world. So that being said, I just want to make sure that I'm constantly uplifting the atrocities in Sudan. And again, this is a sort of a statement and a reaction to Kamala Harris, and I'm gonna get into it, so I don't really repeat what I'm going to be saying in this statement. Again, the Sudan conflict is the subject of this discussion. On July 25th, 2024, Kamala Harris gave a speech about her unwavering support for Israel. I must make it clear that I have an issue with anyone who supports a regime that is committing genocide. We must always be clear that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people, not Hamas, but Palestinians. This podcast discussion is a reaction to Kamala Harris's speech. I have more of an issue with what is not being said. I have a problem with the issue that so many people are ignoring what's taking place in Sudan. My issue is the continuing ignoring of the plight of the Sudanese people. So my question for Kamala Harris is, what about Sudan? This question can be asked to Donald Trump as well, but again, this is a reaction to Kamala Harris's recent speech. I can now understand how a genocide such as the one committed against the Tutsis of Rwanda could have taken place. African lives, whether on the continent or the diaspora, still do not matter. Africans continue to be seen as objects whose lives have no value. The reality that we face is that the precious resources in the ground of Africa are more valuable than the life of an African. This is why more than 25 million Africans in Sudan face a humanitarian crisis. This is why the Olympics will get more media coverage, or did get more media coverage, than the ethnic cleansing that is happening in Darfur. It has been reported that in the next 4 months, 2.5 million Sudanese could die of hunger-related diseases. Let's put this in perspective. The population of Gaza is 2 million. This means that potentially in 4 months, there will be more people who die of hunger-related diseases than the entire population of Gaza. John Prendergast and Anthony Lake wrote, quote, "The explosive expansion of graveyards in Sudan's Darfur region and the genocidal violence marking the battles for its main cities are the visible tip of a mountain of human suffering. Even if wars rage elsewhere in the world, there is no parallel to the intensity and scope of conflict in Sudan. Since civil war erupted in April 2023, 10 million Sudanese have fled their homes. 1 out of every 8 internally displaced persons in the world is Sudanese, and more children have been displaced from their homes in Sudan than anywhere else. It has been reported that the UN has requested $2.7 billion for Sudan to address the humanitarian crisis, but donors have only provided 31% of that. Yet the Olympics ad revenue is projected to surpass $1.25 billion. Nations will unite for a sports competition, but will not unite to save the lives of those that are being subjected to ethnic cleansing and genocide. If we are genuinely the United Nations, how can we play games while genocides are taking place around the world? The following statement is a what-if scenario. What if someone who cared about the plight of the Sudanese were running for president? Someone who understood that the woes of Africa and African people around the world are rooted in the colonial capitalist system. The statement may have gone a bit like this. From when I was a young boy collecting funds to help impoverished children in Africa, to my time in the Uhuru movement, and now at We Charge Colonialism and Black Power Media, I've had an unwavering commitment to the existence and security of Africans around the world, of the Republic of Sudan, and specifically to the people of Darfur. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Sudanese people have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. and their not being able to exercise these rights matters. The Rapid Support Forces, RSF, and the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, are brutal terrorist organizations. On April 15, 2023, RSF and SAF triggered a civil war, and since then, there have been more than 16,000 Sudanese massacred, and some estimates that the death count could be as high as 150,000. Additionally, there are more than half of Sudan's 48 million people facing crisis levels of hunger, with more than 10 million internally displaced, another 2 million having been pushed to flee to neighboring countries, and over 25 million in need of humanitarian aid. The RSF and SAF have committed horrific acts of sexual violence and killings. There are no American citizens captive in Sudan, but it does not matter. I have met with the families of the Sudanese here in America multiple times now, and I've told them they are not alone each time, and I stand with them. The president and I are working every day to end the conflict in Sudan so that those Sudanese displaced by the conflict can go home. I also expressed to the generals of the RSF and SAF my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Darfur, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 25 million people facing high levels of food insecurity. What has happened in Darfur for the past 16 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. Thanks to the current leadership, there is no deal on the table for a ceasefire and return of the displaced. And it is crucial that the people understand the failures of this administration. I plan to broker a deal. The first phase will bring about a complete ceasefire, including the withdrawal of military forces from Darfur's population centers. In the second phase, the military forces would withdraw entirely from Darfur, leading to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Sudan is secure. All the displaced are returned. The suffering of the Masalit and other non-Arab communities in Darfur ends, and the Sudanese people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. We are hopeful of progress in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. I will demand that Generals al-Burhan and Hamedi complete this deal. So I see and I hear you, to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace. Let's get the deal done for a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the refugees home, and let's provide much needed relief to the Sudanese people. Ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to civilian rule as a solution. I know right now that prospect is hard to conceive of. Still, civilian rule as a solution is the only path that ensures Sudan remains a secure African and democratic state, and one that allows all Sudanese to finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve. I will close by remembering that the war in Sudan is not a binary issue. Too often the conversations is binary, when the reality is anything but. I ask the American people to help encourage efforts to acknowledge the region's complexity, nuance, and history of colonialism. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians. And let us condemn anti-Black, anti-African, and hate of any kind. And let us work to end colonial capitalism and racism toward Africans and African descended people in this country and the world by any means necessary. Uhuru and free the land. Now, of course, I'm not running for president, and I doubt that anyone that's running for president or will become president will make a statement remotely similar to the one that I just made. But I think even more has to be said. That statement I made was even moderate, in my opinion. But it's a statement that needed to be made nevertheless, and it's something that we're not hearing from any of the leadership. So with that being said, continue to tap in to We Charge Colonialism. Be a part of these discussions. Be a part of the answer. Make sure that you're spreading the word. Make sure you're uplifting what's taking place in Sudan and all throughout Africa and all throughout the world as it pertains to oppressed, exploited, and colonized people. So, free the land, Uhuru,